So continuing on with the Napoleon at Bay expansion kits and a sidecar cocktail, because of course I like drinking when I'm gaming. We are on turn 19 February, and a freeze. And this is the start of the turn, so it's the French admin phase. I think I already assigned them points. And so this is interesting, and I'm not sure if it's a sign of me doing something wrong or not playing the French very well, or not taking advantage of the opportunities or advantages that the French have. But they have 29 administrative points. Now the sweet spot for administrative points in terms of attrition is you want more than 11. So it would take many turns for the French issuing move orders to everybody. I mean, they could even give them to Napoleon, who's got an initiative of 5 and would likely roll, make his initiative roll anytime he wanted to move. I could just, be burning administrative points on him. So I'm not sure if the game is designed to give this big pool of French administrative points early on, and then they get bled out at later points. Looking at the administrative point chart, I'm not sure that's the case, because so here's prior to February 4th, the French are working in this range, which kind of puts them on the lower end of potential points they can get. But then there's February 11th through 22nd, which is where they are now, puts them in the higher range where they can get some pretty big numbers of administrative points there, and depending on the distance of their center of ops. Right now, the whole game, their center of ops has been here in Cezanne, so which is about 40. It's more than 20 spaces away, but not more than 40. So I've been on the 40 chart, the 40 column for the French during these two periods. So this is their big opportunity right now to get some real points. But even once you get past February 22nd, you get to here, and their center of ops, you've still got some 4s and 5s in there, even a 6. And then, if they're closer, and presumably as the French retreat, right now, their center of ops is pretty far from Paris, all the way over here. As the French retreat in front of the coalition, the Allied armies, it's going to be pushing their center of operations, which is there. It's going to be pushing it back closer to Paris. So, presumably, their center of ops is going to be closer. So, looking at the other dates here, you're on 20. You've still got 6s and stuff in there. So, it's generally worse for the Allies. They don't have a lot of point options. It's better for the Silesian army than the Bohemian army. The Bohemian army is, well, first of all, if they're there, they get nothing. Well, but that's 80. They're never really ever gonna be this far away from your center of ops if you're doing shit right. If you can get in that 20 to 40 range, that's the good spot. But you can see even prior to February 23rd, or even after February 23rd, there's a lot of zeros in there. You can end up rolling for the Bohemian army. So administrative points is definitely a problem for the Allied forces. Like the Bohemian army right now has 8 administrative points. You can see over here on the chart. The Silesian army is holding right at 11. So, already the Bohemian forces, which are coming in from down here. So this is, Barclay and Schwarzenberg and Württemberg and Austrians. it's tough for them to move forces of any size without running into attrition problems, because the fewer administrative points you have, the worse the shift is on your attrition table. So say the Silesians right now are in that 7 to 10 range. So you have a force of any size that you move any distance. You're like way over here on the columns. A force of any size is just going to start bleeding guys if you move any distance at all with them. So you have to be careful. You have to start, and this is what I lamented in one of my earlier videos, you have to start off if you're planning on doing maneuvering, you don't want your guys all grouped together. You can group them together later. You want to keep them close to each other. Keep all of your different commanders and their forces close to each other, so that they can reinforce each other or force march if necessary to make a battle. But don't just glump them into one giant army and try and move it, because you will just lose guys out the wazoo. So, and that has been, again, as I talked about in an earlier video, that is the core of the game, is managing your forces in a war of maneuver. The game really isn't about the fighting. It is about Napoleon working this terrain and trying to bleed the invading Allied forces dry before they can get to Paris. I mean, that's really what it is. And it is fantastic at that. I think this has been very enjoyable. Napoleon's, this game that he plays to force the armies to go where he wants them to go, by controlling these bridges and rivers. So if he puts guys, if there are any forces that have destroyed a bridge adjacent to that bridge, the bridge can't be repaired. So that's how you control the crossings. Now, of course, Napoleon doesn't have enough guys to put, at every place there's a bridge across a major river, to have somebody sitting there and preventing Allied forces from repairing bridges. It would disperse his forces too much, and it would not be sustainable. So, but he's able to do it at enough crossings, and so the most recent exploits were, Napoleon had been watching, because Blucher's forces were massing here, getting ready to cross the river and challenge Napoleon, who was sitting here outside of whatever this town is, Sansu. He had kind of amassed his forces there, but to do that, he had pulled his split forces up that had been down here, sort of screening the Bohemian advance. So once the Bohemians got across the river here, they could threaten, then, you've got the major road right to Paris. So the way these two rivers, the Seine and the Aube, run, they kind of create this dead end here, where you have to get either to one side or the other of those rivers in order to keep the major roads going. So Oudinot, who came on later in the game, marched, I don't know, from somewhere way the hell down here, marched all the way over, and I put him here to destroy this bridge, and then have marched, this is Pacthud, he's marched down from the center of ops to cover this bridge here, to try and funnel the Bohemian troops up towards Blucher, where Napoleon can better corral them. So you've got, down here at Troy, you've got Pajol, who has, or Pajol I think it is, who, I think Pajol would be a Spanish pronunciation, it's Pajol, who burned the bridge at Troy here and just stayed there so that nobody's going to be able to cross there. So that sort of forces the Allies to move up to here. You can see I threw some Allied cav ahead just to make sure that this bridge is secured in case they want to get over. But then, they've got another major crossing that they have to deal with there. otherwise they're going all the way to here to get across these major rivers. So now they have pontoon bridges, so that's always an option. I have not used that yet for the Allies. But the other thing that they did, so with this dead end here, the other major crossing was here. So while I had most of Napoleon's army waiting up here for Blucher to potentially engage them, I had Napoleon rush down here one turn real quick and destroy the bridge there near Orne, and then wait there. So, you know, if the Allies wanted to cross and try and engage Napoleon or to join up with Blucher, they would have to cross up here and take these less desirable roads or move across country to try and engage the majority of Napoleon's forces, or to join up with Blucher, which is what I ended up doing with them, because I thought, you know, I don't want to get sucked into this wild goose chase that, first of all, they can't cross here, so it's, again, they're having to choose a less desirable crossing that takes them a lot longer to move the same amount of distance that a major road does, because remember, they're moving half movement points on major roads, 1 movement point per minor road. So so this is, I just felt like this would be, again, getting sucked into Napoleon's game here, whereas at least here they could cross the river now and then rejoin with Blucher and push forward as one large force. So I did that, and marched them up actually across country, Schwarzenberg and Barclay, and Napoleon was here, and then I had Blucher here and Ostensacken here, and they engaged Napoleon, MacDonald, and Mortier's forces. Well, Schwarzenberg, and first of all, this was good defensive terrain for Napoleon, because these were all wooded hexes that these guys were in, which reduces the strength of attacking infantry to 3/4 of a strength point, and reduces cavalry to half a strength point. So it significantly weakened the strength point forces that these leaders could bring to bear. But Schwarzenberg and Barclay were able to combine into one force and hit Napoleon. They won there and pushed him back. I think they rolled like a 1 or something, which is a -1 with a star for Schwarzenberg, made it a 0. It was either a 2 that became a 1 or a 1 that became a 0. Regardless, that's very good. You want to roll low on the combat table. So they only took a strength point loss. Napoleon had to retreat 4 hexes and also take a strength point loss. But they both chose pursuit, and I think attacking into woods, I think you would want to choose pursuit as opposed to pitched battle, because your forces are being weakened considerably by the terrain. But choosing pitched battle is risky because you can take a lot more casualties. Pursuit turns into this, generally guys just retreating. You lose a strength point here or there. There's no big losses in pursuit battles, but the gains may not be very good either, because you can't break an army in a pursuit battle. The loser always retreats. So unless you get them surrounded or whatever, which clearly the Allies did not have that here. So Napoleon retreated, but MacDonald and Mortier both won their battles. So Blucher and Ostensacken could not combine forces. Blucher's already maxed out on his subordinates, and Ostensacken is also very close. And then MacDonald and Mortier both had fairly large forces under them as well, with some subordinates. Actually, I don't think Mortier has any subordinates, but MacDonald has at least 1, 2. MacDonald had Grouchy and Sebastiani. And MacDonald, next to Napoleon, has I think, the highest command ratio, where he can command up to 7 command points of other subordinated commanders or units, which is next to Napoleon, who has 10. I don't think there's another French leader that has as high a number. But they were able to win. But again, both also chose pursuit battles, and so pushed Blucher and Ostensacken back. They did not choose to pursue. Schwarzenberg and Barclay tried to pursue and rolled terribly, so they essentially borked their pursuit roll, because that could have allowed them to potentially pursue Napoleon, almost as many hexes as he retreated, and he would lose an extra strength point for each hex of pursuit that occurred. But they couldn't even get a pursuit result at all, meaning they can't even advance after combat. This game does not have, a standard, you win a battle, you advance after combat. It's not advance after combat and then pursue. It's your pursuit determines whether you advance at all. And they didn't. So well, Schwarzenberg could not have. He has artillery, but subordinate forces of them could have potentially pursued, or unable to. So, so the big, the big battle of Somme-Sue, the big battle of Somme-Sue kind of turned out to be some guys retreated, but the bulk of the French army stayed, and it was not really a decisive result, but probably a good result for Napoleon, because on this French turn, Napoleon could really just move back up here and maybe have MacDonald move down, or MacDonald move down to here and have Napoleon move to there, and try and isolate and hit just the Bohemian army. The Silesians would have a chance to force march back in and try and disperse some of the hit from Napoleon. But that's a good result for Napoleon, because all he wants to do is delay at this point. He's just trying to prevent the Allies from getting in close to Paris, or taking Paris, or destroying his armies. Again, he just wants to bleed them dry and delay until time runs out and you get to 29 March and the campaign ends. So, and I'm about halfway through, maybe a little less than halfway. So, and in all honesty, unlikely to finish this. I probably won't play too much longer. I've gotten what I think, I've gotten a very enjoyable experience out of this so far. I don't need to finish it. It's been on my table for probably at least 2 months now. There's other stuff that I want to get to. I'm not a Callendale type where I will, play through to the grinding end of, whatever. He always plays the longest campaign of any game. He never does scenarios or anything. It's always the full deal, and that's what I did here. But he always has to finish. He's compelled to do it. I am not. I just get antsy and anxious to try some other stuff, depending on what I'm reading at the time, usually. I did finish reading Swords Around a Throne, which is a fantastic book about the Grande Armée, and I can't recommend it enough to anybody who's even remotely interested in Napoleonics. Although, well, if you only have a passing interest in Napoleonics, it will probably be too much for you. But if you want to know, from soup to nuts, how that army functioned, that is the book that gets into every possible detail, and it's written in a fantastically engaging and lively style by John Elting, the author. So I highly recommended Swords Around the Throne. So that has fed my Napoleonic interests, and definitely enjoyed reading it while I've been playing this. But I don't think I need to get through every last turn all the way, to see, do they make it to Paris or do they not make it to Paris? Frankly, I think Napoleon's done pretty well. I think I've probably been too conservative with the Allies and probably should have been more aggressive with their moving. Right now, I've only moved their centers of operations once, and I feel like probably had I been more aggressive with them, I could have done more. But again, it's very hard to be aggressive when you do not have a lot of administrative points. Just the attrition will really hurt your army. Would they have the opportunity to turn that around? It doesn't look like they're going to get more, that administrative points are going to be easier to come by for the Allies, and it doesn't look like they're going to be that much harder to come by for the French, even as the clock ticks down. So, with the massive advantage that the French have in APs right now, I'm not sure how much chance the Allies have to really either inflict a decisive blow on Napoleon's army or run past it to get to Paris. So, the French have a lot of advantages here in terms of the terrain and in terms of trying to guide where the Allied army goes. Now, again, I'm playing this solo, so if I were playing it opposed, would, my opponent be playing the game, this routing game that I'm trying to do with these two main rivers here, of trying to funnel the Bohemians in a specific direction or stymie them from moving in a particular direction? you know, I don't know, maybe they would have done immediately more what historically happened, which is immediately try and join up their forces. Although historically, Blucher came down here, where are we at, to Brienne. That's where the first major fight of this was fought. So historically, Blucher came down here. He went through Saint-Dizier and I think came down here to meet the French. So, you know, what ended up happening here was Blucher went straight ahead and the Bohemian army funneled its way up slowly. So anyway, you know, opposed, lots of different shit probably would have happened. So, and I think I would like to play this opposed. So eventually, you know, once I can start gaming face to face with my local gaming crew here, one of the guys, one of my typical war game opponents here locally, and I can play this and see how it works. See if there's more potential for the Allies than what I'm seeing here, for what they can do to essentially outfox Napoleon. So this is probably the last video that I do on Napoleon at Bay. I just wanted to go over, you know, what a great experience it's been. You know, some people, I'm looking at you, Kev Sharp, don't like the attrition in this series of games, or maybe in any of the Zucker games. I can't remember how many Kev's actually played, but I find it's pretty for game. I don't know how historically accurate it is. Were these armies, if they were marching in mud, losing, you know, thousands of guys at a time that they could not easily gain back? I don't know. I would think that there should be some kind of rule for stragglers in the game, and this doesn't really take that into account. So, you know, the points you're losing to attrition cannot be regained. And is it guys starving in the snow, or is it guys just falling behind on a forced march through mud? If it's just falling behind, you should be able to regain those after some period of time. So it is brutal attrition. It's not necessarily game breaking or enjoyment ruining for me. I look at it as you need to manage those attrition losses within how you play the game. So it forces you can't march where you want to go as fast as you want to go there. And that seems realistic to me. The weather makes it worse. That makes it realistic to me. A lack of administrative points makes it worse. I think that's very realistic. This was a logistical campaign. That is part of the logistics you have to deal with. Can your guys go as far as you want them to without taking serious losses? As it turns out, no. So that is what you have to manage in the game, and that's what I've really kind of enjoyed about it, to be honest, is all these constraints that are there are not designed for effect constraints necessarily. I think they are based in history. Again, maybe not entirely accurately, at least, as I said, not without a kind of a straggler rule, I think, for the attrition. You know, there should be some percentage of whatever you're losing that can be regained. I think that would do well would be a nice addition to the system. But certainly, the logistical operations of things, the use of administrative points, the way you can use initiative to avoid spending your administrative points, but your overall total of administrative points is still going to affect the attrition you have, even if you move with initiative, I think is a great balanced system, in terms of the way wanting to do one thing makes you think about some other impact on a portion on another system in the game. That's what I mean by balance there, not necessarily that the numbers are entirely accurate. I think that's a great design, I guess is what I should say. It's a great bit of system design, or game design. So really enjoyed it, and looking forward to, and part of the reason I'm going to wrap this up is because I really want to get to, again, which I've showed in previous videos, still sitting over here untouched, set up, but not played yet, Struggle of Nations, which uses the same system, but at a much different scale, with some different elements to the operational map, in terms of how you're moving units, and how you're calculating the distances and so forth. So I'm looking forward to getting to that and giving that a try. and seeing how it stacks up to this. The Napoleon at Bay has typically been considered Zucker's masterpiece of his operational games, as opposed to his grand tactical games. So, and I would agree. I think this is a beautiful piece of design, and I would recommend anybody who hasn't played it before to give it a try. The expansion kit maybe has been a reason for that enjoyment. Perhaps had I played the earlier versions of the game, the Avalon Hill version, the first edition, even the non-expansion kit 1997, the third edition, which is the one I actually have, maybe it would have been a different experience were I playing strictly with those rules and not the more recent operational system 1X rules and revised campaign rules. That certainly may have been an effect. That's why as I've posted these videos on Board Game Geek, I've put them under the expansion kit entry for Napoleon at Bay and not the main Napoleon at Bay entry. So just if you're looking on BGG for where the videos are, that's where they are. That's why you're not going to see them under like the Avalon Hill version of the game, because I wanted to be, this is not the Avalon Hill version. This is not the third edition. This is the new expansion kit rules that I've been playing with. So I'm not sure what all the differences are, but just be aware that's what I'm playing, that's what I'm reviewing, and that's what my experience is with. So again, recommend it. It is I think a quintessential operational Napoleonic game that I think any major Napoleonic wargamer would want to have on their shelf. And if you can find a copy, go for it.